Hello everyone, and welcome to Automation Funding Grants and Bursaries 101. We are thrilled to have you here for today's event. I'm Sukanya Reghosh, editor of Manufacturing Automation. On behalf of our team, I'd like to thank you for giving us your valuable time. The COVID-19 pandemic dramatically increased the demand for technology in workspaces and factory floors across the country. Integral to those solutions were hardware and software deployments that guaranteed safety and productivity during the months of abrupt closures and disruptions to supply lines. Fortunately, the Government of Canada offers a number of grant programs for manufacturers. Funding is available to help companies like yours to expand, innovate, create new jobs, and support the nation's transition to a green economy. But these competitive funds flow quickly, and only those companies who are ready to respond will reap the benefits. So today's session focuses on large trends in grants available for your technology purchases, including an overview of financial support anticipated for 2022. Throughout the presentation, you'll hear useful tips from industry leaders on how to ensure your company is ready to submit a competitive proposal that will stand out amongst the rest. Before we get started, some housekeeping. You, the audience, will be in listen-only mode. You will be able to toggle from either seeing the full screen of the speaker, the full screen of the slides, or have both on screen by using your controls in the Zoom window. If you have any questions for our presenter, please feel free to type them in at any time during the presentation using the questions tab. We may not have enough time to answer questions live at the end of the session. So if your question is not addressed, please contact us via email, or we'll get in touch with you about them. You'll also receive the link to the recording of today's session within a few days of the event. We'd like to say a big thank you to our event sponsor, without whom this event would not have been possible. So thank you to Cisco. We would also like to thank our content partner, Grants Office Canada, for sharing the valuable information on grants and bursaries for automation. Our live session today will be presented by Ashley Schultz from Grants Office. At the end of this session, there will be a poll for the audience. We will then proceed to a 10-minute Q&A session when Ashley will answer any questions you have. The presentation will end with the closing remarks. We encourage you to check out the content available on demand on our event website. Included in these are 4 sessions tailored to specific interest areas: grants for automotive manufacturers, grants for industrial equipment and fabrication manufacturers, grants for process manufacturers, and grants for partnerships and innovation, which cover programs that support research and development through collaboration with universities or research institutions. Stephanie Caesar and Joseph Fallon from the Grants Office have presented these on-demand sessions. And now let's take a look at a video message from our sponsor, Cisco.
The University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee is helping equip students for high-tech careers in industry. Rockwell Automation and Cisco are providing cutting-edge technology. An automated factory right on campus offers hands-on experience. All are preparing students for a tech-enabled future. Between education and industry, there's a bridge.
So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's live session, Ashley Schultz. Ashley Schultz is the Global Manager of Research and Consultation for Grants Office LLC. Grants Office is a global company that helps organizations find and apply for grants. Her team has more than 20 years of experience in assisting for-profit businesses, governments, schools, hospitals, and community organizations in their pursuit of funding. Last year, they helped their clients around the globe to identify and secure more than $1.5 billion in grants. Welcome, Ashley, and I would like to hand over the floor to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning to folks on the West Coast. Good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon to those folks on the East. My name is Ashley. Like Sukanya said, I am the Global Manager of Research and Consultation for Grants Office. We help folks, like Sukanya said, find and apply for grants across the globe. So for the past 20 years or so, we've been advising folks on ways to capture public funding, and then also ways particularly to use that funding for their technology projects. Grants Office certainly doesn't start and end with me. We have a team here that I'm fortunate to supervise, consultants that exclusively focus on grants inside Canada, day in and day out. They keep their fingers on the pulse of funding. They read those hundreds and hundreds of pages of government documents and budgets each year, all with the purpose of determining what, where, and really how funding is going to be spent on technology inside Canada. Really thrilled to be chatting with you here today. Huge thanks to the folks at Manufacturing Automation for organizing this event, and also a thanks to Cisco for sponsoring the event. Grants Office and Cisco, we've actually had an ongoing relationship for a majority of Grants Office's existence. Together, our two companies, we've been learning about the funding landscape and finding creative ways for organizations just like yourselves to capture more public funding that's out there and use it for their technology projects. Through that process, we found that a lot of people are interested in grants. We've got a big crowd here today. A lot of folks have heard about grants. They've heard about a company down the road that received hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some people have even tried grants. I imagine there's some folks here who have tried their hand at a grant application. Maybe it was just, a quick one-page application, or maybe it was this, big 50-page monster of a proposal that took you 3 months. But through all of that, through the folks that are just starting out or the folks that have tried some grants in the past, what we hear most often from folks across Canada and truly across the globe is that most folks don't have enough time or they don't have enough resources really truly to dedicate themselves to grants. What happens most often is that someone in an organization, someone at your company, they have an idea. They want to go green in some way. They want to improve a process. They want to try something new. They find a grant for it and they share that grant with their leaders, and leadership say, that sounds awesome. Good luck. Let us know how it goes. Let us know if you win. And that really leaves folks in a pickle, particularly if you've never applied to a grant before, particularly if they're brand new to the whole process. Some grants require quite a bit of background knowledge. Some grants require, a bit of finesse, a bit of a way of laying out your argument in a particular way. And if you've never done it before, it can be a little bit intimidating. And that's really some of the things that I'd like to discuss with you here today. Tricks of the trade, pain points that we have heard from individual companies like yourselves, individual organizations across Canada, and ways that we have coached them through those pain points. I'd like to share them here with you. My hope is that you can kind of take these resources with you and really jump into your first or fifth or 20th grant application feeling more comfortable, more confident. Particularly when it comes to taking technology and incorporating that into your grant proposal. So, actually, let me switch here. So that's kind of the general layout here, getting started with grants, getting comfortable with the terminology, understanding where they're coming from, the general themes that we're seeing, how to incorporate tech into that whole process, and then how to take your first steps. What sort of tasks to take when you sit down to actually write your grant application, how to get your organization grant ready while you wait for the perfect grant opportunity to open up for you. But as Sukanya said, we have 4 individual breakout sessions about relevant funding opportunities. So what I encourage you to do here today is just hear with us now, hear about these general grant seeking techniques, general tactics, learn kind of take in this general knowledge and then apply that general knowledge to the relevant funding opportunities in those 4 breakout sessions. Because we have such a diverse audience today, I personally am going to try to remain a little bit high level, more general grants information, more general grants feedback, and then take all that information and really apply it to the individual funding sessions offered by Joseph and Stephanie. And I'm going to end my presentation here today talking about some additional resources that are available to you. So as I mentioned, our sponsor Cisco here today, they have a long-standing relationship with us, Grants Office, in terms of helping people find and apply for grants. So that assistance is available to you. It's entirely no cost. It's entirely no obligation to make a purchase on the part of your organization, but it can include one-on-one conversations like we're having today, but targeted towards your organization, towards your company, about where you're going, what type of solutions you'd like to utilize to get you there, and what types of grants can really help you along that path. So if you have interest in additional help there, stay tuned. That's at the very end of the presentation. So with that, I want to just kind of quickly start with where grants come from. We have three general sources of grants that are available to manufacturers. The first is going to be the federal government of Canada. These are various ministries that you've all heard of, right? The Canadian Space Agency, Natural Resources Canada, Infrastructure Canada, all of these different ministries, all with their own priorities, all with their own agendas. They are receiving money from the budget each year, and they're using some of that money for grants. The grants that they're coming up with, the grants that they are offering to folks, are going to be some of the most complex grants that we'll talk about here today. These are out there to fund innovative solutions, test beds. They're really looking for someone to change the field and to be a role model, really, for other companies. Federal grants to that end are going to offer the largest in terms of award sizes, right? So they're asking the most of you, and they're going to then give the most to you in terms of an award. It also makes sense because the federal government, they have the most resources available to them. So they're going to be able to give to the largest types of projects, and they're going to be able to give to the most money. Because they are large and complex and offer large award sizes, these grants are going to be the most competitive ones you'll see in Canada. They're open across the entire country. So that means that the pool of applicants is pretty large. And also they're pretty popular. They're well-known programs. They're familiar names to folks. So a lot of people are applying. And then you have that big dollar amount to kind of cap that all off. So federal government grants, again, very large, pretty complex, large dollar size, and generally are going to be for the folks that have already applied to one or two grants in the past, had success with them, and are ready for that next step. The provincial government grants are going to be an additional set of ministries, right, from each of the provinces. Each of the provinces has their own budget, they have their own agenda, they have their own ministries, and they're all out there doing their own granting. If we look at Alberta, for example, Alberta has the Ministry of Jobs, Economy and Innovation. That is very, very similar to the Canadians or the federal government's Innovation, Science and Economic Development Department. So two ministries, two similar tasks, two similar kind of agendas. And the ministry in Alberta, they are out there gifting grants for college and industry partnerships, shoring up SMEs during COVID shutdowns to make sure no businesses close. Offering cybersecurity grants for manufacturers to make sure that all of their systems are safe and secure. So you have these individual provincial ministries hosting grants, excuse me. And then you also have in this category, I would put those regional development agencies. These are folks like the economic development agencies of the Prairies or Northern Ontario or Southern Ontario. Technically, they are federal government agencies, but they operate very, very similar to the provincial grants in that they are less competitive, right? Because you're just competing against folks within your region or within your province. They offer more targeted grant opportunities. So whereas the Canadian federal government needs to have their grant applied across the whole country, Northern Ontario Economic Development can really focus on what Northern Ontario needs. And in some cases, that's different than what Southern Ontario needs. So you're going to notice that those grants are slightly more targeted for each region. And then last, because this is kind of a gradual trickle down, these grants tend to be smaller in award size. These are great places for you to get started with grants and really try it out, get comfortable with it before you approach the federal government grants. And then last, we have the private foundations, excuse me, and corporate trusts. These don't as often gift to for-profit initiatives, but they're a really good place to check if you have some sort of small project that's generally outside the parameters of the government. I think a nice, like a warm and fuzzy project, like increasing STEM involvement or offering virtual field trips to the local elementary school, or things like that, things that benefit the community, kind of tap into education or community development purposes. These are going to be the smallest and kind of the most confined projects, but they could be something that you look into. So here's some of the top themes of grant funding that we see. Like I said, we track programs across Canada and across the globe. Here are some resounding themes that we see in the funding landscape. As you look across this list, you'll see lots of funding priorities have shifted towards virtual work, virtual education, remote patient management, those types of things. This is not surprising given the global pandemic. Folks are trying to be successful. They're trying to continue production. They're trying to advance their fields. They're still trying to do all this, but they're doing so in a pretty new virtual environment like we all are here today. Grant funders in Canada in a large way noticed that shift and have reacted with either new programs or priority areas in existing programs to kind of accommodate those changes and make sure that work and innovation and collaboration still happen, even in a remote setting. And that's, I mean, kind of as an aside, that's pretty something. Grants, they generally move at the pace of government, which is pretty slow. So the fact that we're seeing a lot of grants pop up around these virtual settings, virtual collaboration, is pretty astounding. It's happened quite quickly. If you look specifically into the manufacturing space, we see those adaptive workspaces, we see those virtual collaboration pieces, but we also see things like clean technology, green innovation, so actually producing making new products, bringing new products to market that help to enhance green initiatives. And then we also see grants for adoption. So these products already exist and you would like to add those products to your factory or to your production line. And then last, particularly the federal government of Canada is very big into promoting business expansion, bringing new products to market, expanding the number of high-wage, high-skilled jobs that are offered to folks in Canada. And then once you have success with that, promoting that knowledge, promoting those products worldwide. So making Canada a global leader in cybersecurity or in green technology and such. So you have these funders, you have the types of the goals and objectives that they're bringing to the table, and then you have the types of equipment that they're supporting in that objective. First, you have kind of your general equipment. These are items that you probably first think of when I mention technology for the workplace. These are your mobile devices, your tablets, your cell phones, desktop computers, those remote work solutions or flexible work solutions, workplace health and safety tools. These are things that folks are interacting with every day at your organization. Then you have this more advanced equipment. These are things that are implemented by some larger companies, maybe by only a few individuals on your team. They're not your everyday gear, but they're used for more specialized projects or more complex operations like digital analytics, trying to drive data-based decision-making for your organization. Environmental monitoring, being able to tell what the temperature is in a refrigerator 40 miles from you and actually make it go up or down. Those types of things, again, a little bit more advanced, but still within the purview of all the folks that were here on the phone with us today. And then you have that network infrastructure. These are the items that people don't usually think of unless you're an IT professional. Things like cybersecurity, keeping you up at night, Wi-Fi routers, switches, routers, cloud computing, all of these things probably keeping you very busy during the day. These are things that people out on the floor may take for granted. They may really not think about them unless they're broken or unless they're not working. But really the network infrastructure is the glue that's holding everything together. And in the sense, your operations today probably involve items from all three of these categories. And in turn, your grant application is also going to kind of have that comprehensive scope. So if you are coming here today saying, I really need inventory management, that's key on my priority list for 2022. I absolutely need to purchase this type of solution. You may find a grant out there for inventory management and purchasing those tools, purchasing access to that software, but it's likely that your grant application is going to include 40 tablets, so the folks that are out on the production line can access that inventory management system. They can see exactly what they need to see. They can walk over to the place where they need to be. And in addition to holding that mobile device, that device is going to be connected to your on-prem storage or your cybersecurity solution to make sure that that device itself is secure and no one can come in and have access to your inventory management if you don't want them to, or edit your inventory management system. Same thing is true for your wireless access. So you can kind of very quickly see how a grant application for inventory management starts to build out into a more comprehensive project. It includes things from all three of these categories. And grant funders are going to like to see that. They're going to want to know that yes, you need inventory management, but you have thought about this from all of these different angles, and you are ready to deploy a comprehensive and complete solution for them. And this is jumping a little bit ahead, but while we're kind of talking about comprehensive budgets, grant funders are also going to want to see comprehensive projects. So while you're thinking about your budget, you're going to want to include other things that are going to help you round out your project. For example, if you're going to do 40 additional tablets, you may want to have a warranty service plan for them. You may want to have folks come in and help you to install the new solution that you've proposed in your grant budget. If you happen to forget to include this in the budget when you go to click submit and you're awarded, you actually cannot typically go back to the funder and ask them for more money, which means that that's now on you to make that purchase yourself, to make that solution a reality. So the grant funders are going to want to see not only a comprehensive budget for your technology, but also make sure that you're hitting all those additional components so that if the grant is approved, you truly are ready to kind of hit the ground running once that program becomes a reality. Other things folks often forget, staff time, policy development. If you are deploying a brand new inventory management system, someone's going to have to sit down and plan that through, introduce it to the team, train the team on how to use it. That's all time that can be covered under the grant. Or if the grant has a local match component, you could perhaps use that person's time as part of your local match contribution. So be sure you're kind of thinking about all the different ways that this project is going to impact your organization, and make sure that you have all those components documented in your budget and in your project plan. And that kind of brings us to this, this dichotomy of grants that you're going to see. So hopefully today you get very excited about grants and you get very excited to go out there and look to see what types of grants are out there that can support your technology solutions, support your push for new automation. And when you go out to search, I want to kind of prepare you for what you might find. On the left are the grants that we have that are exclusively created to fund technology. We love these grants. You probably love these grants. One example that you'll hear in the breakout sessions is the Targeted Manufacturing Initiative. It's offered by the folks in Northern Ontario. And within the first 7 or 8 lines of this grant, they actually refer to purchase and installation of plant equipment. And they specifically say digital hardware and software. So right there, within the first couple of paragraphs, they have let you know this is a grant for technology. Almost all the bullet points underneath that also refer to technology or digital solutions or some aspect of installing new equipment to make your plant more efficient. And when we look at a sample budget for that, it probably looks like this pie chart here on the left. A large portion of that budget being dedicated towards technology with small additional components for personnel, for installation, maybe a contractor to come in and actually install a certain complex piece of equipment, staff time, travel, although travel is not really a thing in COVID anymore, but sometimes grants involve travel expenses. But that is not going to be most grants. What you are going to see much more often are these grants on the right, which are these technology-friendly grants. These are grants that can support technology if you build your project around it. And I will start this off by saying that it's really incumbent upon you, the applicant, to make that connection obvious for the person who's reviewing the grant. The person who's reviewing the grant is going to come at these grants here on the right with an objective of some goal, some target, improving efficiency, creating more jobs. Before I showed the slide of other themes, and emergency preparedness was on there. So if I'm a grant reviewer and I have a particular goal of improving emergency preparedness, I may see applications out there for hiring staff, building up a riverbank to reduce flooding, installing a tornado alarm. I'm going to see a whole bunch of non-technology related projects because those all relate to emergency preparedness. But I may also see some that are all about technology. Communities trying to install sensors all over their city that gather a whole bunch of data and then process that data and send off automated alerts. Or I've even seen a city that had sensors on the bridge and they had digital signage, and the signage which actually turn on if the road conditions and the moisture in the air and the temperature hit a certain level to let drivers know that icy conditions could be coming ahead. And that was all automated through all of these sensors, and it was all funded through a grant. And all of those folks are doing emergency preparedness in their own way, right? Some involve technology and some did not involve technology. And the same is going to be true for the grants you see for manufacturers. So again, if you start searching for grants, you're not going to see too many grants with titles like cybersecurity for the factory floor or flexible work settings for Canadian automobile manufacturers. So there are grants out there that support both of those things, but they're going to be likely more hidden in those right-hand column of technology-friendly grants, and that they may have titles more closely related to, like, there's a grant called the Jobs and Growth Fund. It doesn't immediately scream technology, but you can use tech, you can deploy tech in your company if it will help you to produce more jobs for Canadians and help you to grow into new markets. So if the technology fits and you can make that argument that, you know, if A then B, then the grant funder is here to listen to it. So really with that, the mantra I want to leave you here with today is that it's the project, not the product, that's going to get funded. Grant funders are going to be looking to support their objectives that I mentioned, those broad themes. Their ministry is out to, you know, accomplish these goals. They're using grants to accomplish those goals, and they want to know that it's your project that's accomplishing that goal, not necessarily the product. So one of the things that you're going to have to do is kind of focus on the need of the project. Not necessarily, oh, I need an inventory management system. It's more you have to flip the question and say, well, you know, what's the outcome that we're expecting? What exactly is this going to bring to us? And what's our organization going to look like once this has been successfully deployed? You can use that by identifying a specific pain point. Perhaps you have a lot of new staff and your staff doesn't really know as much about the floor and about your operations as the folks that have always worked there, have worked there for several years. So as a point of improving onboarding, you want to have an inventory management system so you can have folks know exactly where they need to go very quickly, and you're not going to lose any productivity or a significant amount of staff time with training. You could also do something in terms of frame it in terms of an opportunity. Gosh, you know, we could really do X, Y, and Z if we could improve our efficiencies with our inventory. Those are that's the kind of way you need to invert the question rather than I just need this. It's more, what would this do for us? Because at the end of the day, that's really, again, what the grant funder is interested in is the project, your outcomes, what you're going to do for Canadian manufacturers across the country, or how you're going to hire more folks. That's really what they're interested in. And I kind of stole a little bit of the thunder on that last slide for this, but really by doing that, you're focusing on the outcome. You know, the inventory management school is going to aid us in resource allocation. Maybe we have perishable items and things are expiring on the shelves because we don't know where they are. It's going to help you aid in resource allocation. Maybe you want to reduce costs by having data-driven decision-making. I think we can really be more efficient. I really think we could do this faster. I really think we could do this better if we only knew where everything was, and if we only knew, kind of how to move things throughout our system in a more efficient way. Maybe your collaboration involves other partners and other suppliers, and at any one point in time, your products are in 700 different places. That would help you, again, to become more efficient, to become more green as we move towards the green transition, reducing the number of trips or reducing the amount of transportation involved, improve your supply chain performance. All of these different things kind of leading themselves, again, to the outcome rather than the need, because when you look at your project in these ways, this is what you're going to see when you go out and search for grants. You are going to see grants that say, we're trying to improve supply chain performance. We're trying to encourage data-driven decision-making. And if you already know your technology is going to connect to one of those, you've already done half the work. So kind of transitioning then into the relevant funding. As I mentioned, we have all of these awesome breakout sessions here after today's event. There's going to be a session there for automotive manufacturers, industrial equipment fabrication, process manufacturers, and also a really cool one about innovation and partnerships. Even if you kind of immediately zoomed into one of the top three, I encourage you to check out the fourth one as well. This is all about industry and university partnerships and going to market or trying something new and having you, the manufacturer, actually lean on a research institution or a university and their capacity to collect data, process data, crunch the numbers, and really come up with some interesting solutions and some interesting perspectives. Even if you think you're a little too small maybe for that kind of thing, I absolutely encourage you to check out that event. It's pretty cool. So hop into those events, learn about grants that are specifically targeted towards your organization. Joseph and Stephanie have gone through and looked at all of the top grants that are technology friendly and put them into those presentations. While you're listening to those presentations, and I'm really sorry about the length of text on this slide, but I kind of wanted to leave you with this so that you can go back and reference it. Particularly if you end up going back and doing more research, looking for more grants, or 6 months from now are on the hunt again for even more opportunities. Use these questions to kind of select the best grants out there for you. There may at any one point in time be 24 grants available to you, and we certainly don't want you to apply to all 24 grants, probably just 1 or 2. And these kind of questions will help you sort through and figure out which grants are really going to be best for you. Project scale. What are we trying to do, and what is this grant trying to do? And are those two things aligned? Can we satisfy all of the project components? So you may see a grant that has 7 or 8 different steps required of applicants. We want to see you do community surveys and develop a product, and they want to see you do all these things. And maybe you just need 20 desktop computers. So is the work required of that grant match the work that you as an organization want to do? Do those things, does the scale of both of those match? Or is it going to lock you into way too many extra activities for really what is, a transactional technology purchase? How much money is available? Also a really good thing to look at. How much money do you need versus how much money is available? So if a grant only offers $200,000, it's probably not realistic that you could ask for $150,000. More realistically, they're probably looking to spread that $200,000 across 5 to 10 organizations. So make sure that your scale of your grant matches the total funding available. Local match, will you have to contribute some? If the project will only cover 50% of the total project costs, are you able to contribute that other 50%? Do you have that cash on hand? Does in-kind matching count? Can you count staff time and existing equipment and some of the things that you're already working on as in-kind match rather than cash? Important things to kind of go there and look at. If you look further into the application, maybe you Google some things and you go and actually find the grant guidance. It's usually a 30, 40-page document. How many pages do you have to write? How long is this application? Do you have somebody on hand who can write it for you? Do you have enough time to develop a project for this grant? Some grants are going to be due once a year. Some grants are going to be due at any point in time. So you can submit an application whenever you're ready. So is it that kind of project in which you can really take your time, circle your wagons, get everyone ready? Or do you really need to, is there really only like, 2 or 3 weeks left before this grant is due? And do you really need to, hurry up and get it done? Collaboration requirements. Do you need to have collaboration here? Would it improve your project if you did? Do you have any partnerships that you're already working on that you could leverage? Maybe you have other companies that you're already working with, or maybe you already have a contact at a local university and they've said, yeah, I'd love to help out. Let us know if we can at any point in time. Do you have those relationships, or will you need to make them? And if you do need to make them, do you have enough time to do so? And then last, probably most importantly, is program fit. Does this fit? Do we see previously funded projects that look like ours? Do we see folks on the award list that look like us? Do we think that we're going to kind of be an ideal candidate for this grant application? If you're going out and searching for your own grants, like I said, Joseph and Stephanie are going to give you some what we already consider to be very technology-friendly grants. But if you're going out and looking for more grants and you come across one and you're like, is this technology-friendly? I'm not quite sure. Check the guidance. Look through that 30, 40-page document that I mentioned. Look for a list of allowable or unallowable expenses, eligible or ineligible expenses. More often than not, you're going to see a list of ineligible expenses. Not very many folks put allowable ones, but ineligible expenses is enough. Find that, and if they do include it, or excuse me, if it's not on the list of ineligible expenses, it's eligible. So if they go through and say no office furniture, no phones, no money for paying your rent or utilities, and that's it, that implies that technology is an eligible expense for that program. You can read between the lines too. There's a lot of grants out there in Canada for green initiatives, for moving towards the green transition. And by default, a lot of process automation and reducing waste and reducing time and increasing efficiency, all of those things lead to more eco-friendly processes. So that's kind of something that you can kind of read in between the lines for. You can also look what's been funded in the past. You can also ask the funder for clarification. Just shoot them an email, see what they say. The more specific your email, the more specific their response. Know that they're not going to give you probably a value judgment. This sounds like a great idea, or this doesn't sound like a great idea. Usually they won't get that specific. Usually they'll just say, this is an eligible expense, or this is not an eligible expense. And then you have to go from there. So build your list of possible grants, identify 3 or 4 across today's presentation and perhaps in some of your other research. Follow the links, learn some more about each program, revisit the questions from that previous slide, and ultimately, as I mentioned before, identify 1 or 2 that you'd like to move forward with, and start making a plan to apply, which kind of leads us here into the last section of what I want to talk to you about, which is how to become a grant-ready company. It's a process. It's well worth the work, and it's something that I definitely encourage you to do almost on an annual basis. Just check in, make sure that you are grant ready, and that when the correct opportunity opens up, that you have already done as many of the background steps as possible to make your application process even easier once you get started. So grant ready companies, 1, you've already checked off box number 1. You know that grants fund projects, not products. So as you are looking at your budget ahead, as you're making plans for the next 12, 18 months on what you'd like to improve in terms of automation, in terms of IT infrastructure, start thinking about those products and start thinking about what types of projects that they will enable. As you're doing that, dive into the statistics, or have somebody else dive into the statistics of your company or your community and help illustrate some challenges. What challenges is that technology going to address, and how specifically can you illustrate those challenges? It's not enough in a grant application to say, we're noticing a decrease in productivity. Put some numbers to that. We've noticed a 10% decrease in X, Y, and Z. We're exporting 75 minutes slower, all these different things. Any sort of numbers or concrete figures that you can add is going to enhance your application. If you suspect that you have some statistics there, but you need a way to measure them, there are quite a few grants out there for feasibility studies or for like planning. They have like planning grants and implementation grants. So you may look out there for a planning grant. We want to do this really huge thing. We're a little bit daunted by how to make it happen. So a grant funder will give you a small amount of money to actually plan that out, work with the university to help you with your statistics, work with some researcher to help you with your statistics, and then deploy that into a full-blown grant application for full-blown implementation. Another thing you can do to become grant ready is involve vendors, particularly if you're looking at a large IT purchase. Involve them from the start so that you can get accurate quotes and so that you can make sure you're including all the necessary gear. You may have your eyes specifically on that inventory management solution that I mentioned earlier. Your vendors are going to make sure that you have all that network infrastructure behind you to make sure that the program is a success. So I would encourage you to involve them right from the beginning. They can also give you the accurate quotes so that you can include that quote right in your proposal. Next thing I encourage you to do is rally the troops. I mentioned on the very first slide that oftentimes grants fall to the folks that get nominated to write them. See if there are some folks in your organization who can meaningfully contribute to the grant application process. I would encourage you to look at this in terms of quality rather than quantity. So who are the team members who are really going to get the job done? Who are the folks that you need on your team for approval? Who are the folks that really have their finger on the pulse of data and infrastructure and the kind of the overall numbers of the company? Once you kind of identified those folks, pledge to some regular stakeholder meetings so that you guys stay honest to each other, you meet regularly, and you have that target date for the deadline for submission, and you kind of work backwards from there. We're going to meet every week until we submit this. If the grant you are interested in is not open right now, or if you're expecting your grant application enthusiasm to really kick in, next spring, there are some things you can do now to get yourself prepared. If you think you're going to include a partnership, or you think you're going to include more companies than just yourself in your application, getting letters of support or MOUs signed now is huge. These are sometimes the first things that you'll start and the last things that you'll submit in terms of the grant application. So they do take a little bit of time just to get the attention of the folks who need to sign them and who need to write them. So if you think that they're going to be necessary for your grant application, if you think it's going to involve a partnership outside your organization, get those folks on board now and remind them that they need to write a letter of support for you. An easier task, get in touch with your administration, make sure you have updated financials, make sure you have all the relevant identification numbers, make sure that you have all of your audited tax documents, make sure either you or someone in your organization knows where all of those things are and that they're all up to date. Because that small detail can keep you from submitting a grant application, even if you've written the entire thing. And then last, learn as much as possible about the grant before you apply. Check out the folks that have won in the past. If you're feeling bold, reach out to those folks and ask them, what was the process like? What helped you? What hindered you? Learn from each other and learn as much as you can from what the funder has put out online. And then with my last few tips here, as you're sitting down to write the application, make sure you're asking the right questions of your team. I'll leave these here for you, but a lot of times folks will just be given a grant application and just say, hey, we'd like to write this for automation. Good luck, have fun. So these are kind of the questions that you want to reach out to the team for. I understand we're going to deploy this new automation. I understand we're going to deploy this new change to our floor. Why did we pick this? Why is this the best option to solve the problem? What is the problem? Those are kinds of the questions that are difficult to answer, but they're going to be the exact questions that the grant funder is asking you to answer. So getting this information or starting to pull this information from your team ahead of time is going to be really, really helpful to you when it comes time to answer those questions in the grant itself. There is no template for grants, but this is generally what grants ask for. Basic organization description, who are you? What do you do? What do you need? And what are you planning to do in order to address this? So anything that you can pull from these questions, you can start a document. You or your grant seeking team can start a document and just start dropping in this type of information. Things to not ignore: the timeline for deployment. What is your timeline? It's not enough. Grant funders are going to want to know kind of your general progression. We're going to do this in Q1, this in Q2, or we're going to do this in September, this in October, this in November. So start thinking about your timeline. Be generous, be kind to yourself, leave yourself enough time. Don't be too aggressive, but know generally how you operate, how long it generally takes you guys to do things, and make sure that you have that exact timeline laid out for the funder. Another thing to kind of think about, a hard question to answer sometimes, can be the plan for future funding, sustainability. If the grant funder gives you a very large amount for automation, for new hardware, for new software, what happens when the grant ends? If there's an annual subscription to the software, for example, being able to say in your application that we as an organization are committed to taking up this cost with our own funds after the grant funding is over. That's a huge, a great vote of confidence from the grant funder to know that you guys believe in this project, and after the grant funding ends, this is going to continue. So do some research, make sure that you can afford those kinds of things, and make sure that you can make those kinds of commitments. If you can't, start thinking of some creative ways on how to make sure this project has some sustainability once the funding cycle is over. Grant funders are going to be looking for that. And last, I just want to let you know to ask for help when you need it. Ask around internally. If you have a draft, give it to your neighbor, give it to your cousin, give it to somebody who's outside of your organization so that they can look it over and help to let you know, gosh, I really didn't understand this, or I used some acronyms I didn't know about, or I don't really know what you're talking about here. Those folks who are outside your organization, who are totally outside this project, are going to be able to give you better advice on what your application does or does not need, because they're viewing it from the lens that the grant funder is going to be looking at it from. A fresh set of eyes, totally outside this project, learning everything for the first time. They're going to give you pretty good feedback. An additional way to get help here as the end, I mentioned that the Cisco team has worked with Grants Office to provide help. So everything I just mentioned here today, finding grants, finding a way to incorporate technology into your grant proposal, finding the right words to include in your grant application, finding the right arguments to make in terms of justifying grants in your technology and proposal, that's something that Grants Office does all day, every day, and that is something that's available to you. So we're around to discuss the funding landscape with you. We're around to help you find the best grants. We're around to help you create that concrete action plan, and then provide support with you all the way up until you click submit. I obviously speaking to you in English today, but we also have folks on our team who are available to speak to you in French if you prefer to speak in French. And as I said before, all of these services are completely of no cost to you. They're of no cost and they're of no obligation from the Cisco team. So if you have any interest, if you want to chat with us about your project, if you want to talk in more detail about your specific situation and about the specific grants that are available to you, know that we're here to help. We would love to chat with you. We love to talk about grants. I've left my contact information here, and I've also left our email, cisco@grantsoffice.com. So you can reach out to the folks that are organizing this conference, or if you see this here now, you can shoot an email over to cisco@grantsoffice.com. We will be more than happy to talk to you about your project. Again, there's no cost involved in this, and there's also no obligation. Really, we love grants and we love to talk about grants. So if you would like to talk about this a little bit more, please feel free to reach out. And with that, I do want to leave a few minutes for question and answer. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass things back over to Sukanya.
That was an insightful presentation indeed. A poll will now come up on your screen. Please respond before we proceed to the Q&A with Ashley. The poll question asks, what technology would you invest in if money were not an obstacle? It's going to be up for a few seconds for you to be able to answer. Some interesting options here that I see: predictive analytics and sensors, augmented or virtual reality, 3D printing, cybersecurity, wireless access, remote collaboration, video, application visibility and control, and others. We'll leave it up for just about another 5 or 10 seconds. Let people answer. We have quite a lot of questions coming in for Ashley. Okay, so here are the poll results. Oh, looks like 49% of respondents want to invest in predictive analytics and sensors. That's really interesting. And then we have about 29, 26, 25% in 3D printing, cybersecurity, application visibility and control. Those are some interesting results. Okay, so Ashley, there are so many questions that have come for you. I'd like to proceed to them. Here, one of them here is, are these programs focused on innovation of hardwares, or they also cover software solutions?
Yep. So we see a lot of innovation, a lot of grant programs for folks who are looking to innovate in both hardware and software.
Okay. We have another question that asks, do grant funders consider funding asset management solutions that use new technologies like VR or AR?
That's cool. That's a cool idea. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, again, so long as you can prove that it's going to help achieve their goals or their objectives. If it's something brand new and something that's really never been tried before, look for an innovation grant. There's this new hardware and software on the market. It leverages VR. It's never been used in a manufacturing setting, or it's never been used in our setting before, and we would like to try it out. In those cases, you want to look for an innovation grant. If it's a tried and true practice, you would look for any of those grants out there that are just, looking out there to help manufacturers improve their processes.
Okay. So we have another question here that asks, what are the best sites or places to know if a grant is open or not?
So the Government of Canada actually has a really great resource. I will shoot over an email to you. I see your question here. I'll shoot you over an email. But there's a great website out there. The name is escaping me right now. But it has little stars. You can actually click on the star to save a program, and you'll actually get an email update on whether or not that grant has been opened and is currently accepting applications. And individual provinces are also going to have their own homepages for manufacturing grants. Also, those economic development operations that I mentioned before, they're going to have their own websites. And almost all of these websites actually allow you to sign up for automated emails. So if they post a new grant, you will receive an email automatically. So I encourage you just to do a little searching, look to see what province you're in, look to see those relevant sites. They're going to be hosted by the government. And again, most of them are going to offer free emails to you. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of that website, but I see your email here and I'm going to shoot it over to you after the presentation.
We also have a question here that asks, what about grants for collaborating with companies that currently offer those processes? For example, laser cutting on primary materials.
Partnering, if you are partnering to advance what they've done, like bring a new product to market, then absolutely you're going to want to look for those innovation grants. If you're looking to partner just in terms of deployment, again, you would kind of look for those grants that are looking to improve processes or try something new. Again, looking at that innovative, I guess it would give me, yeah, I guess it'd be an example of what you meant by partnering. Shoot me a message.
So we have a request here to share the website that you had mentioned when answering the previous question. I think many of our attendees would like to know the link for that website. And okay, so there's another question here. Are feds still offering grants in their programs? Okay.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a slowdown. So the federal government actually does not, actually shuts down a little bit surrounding the election cycle, so as not to influence the election with public funding. So there was a little bit of a slowdown there in the fall, but we are definitely seeing grant programs move. Obviously, it's Christmas time, it's the holiday season, so there's not too many grants open right now, but definitely still some grants. Repayable loans as well, but definitely grants.
Okay. We have another question here that asks, are any grants available for large-scale companies?
Yes. So we are going to see a lot of funding out there for SMEs in terms of deploying these solutions. A lot of the grants out there for larger enterprises are going to be in that innovation, that partnership space, bringing a new product to market. But we do see companies of any size being able to participate in things like the Jobs and Growth Fund, anything that's going to bring more jobs in the high-skilled, high-paid areas are also available.
Okay. We have a question here that asks, is there overlay of SR&ED and grants, that is the amount the company spends on innovation, can be claimed for SR&ED?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I would encourage you to reach out to our consultants in Canada, Joseph and Stephanie. Their emails are in the presentations of the breakout sessions, and they'll be able to help you. Sorry about that.
Okay. We have, oh my God, so many questions coming in. This is really exciting. So do grants also fund lease expenses versus outright purchases?
Could you repeat that?
Do grants also fund lease expenses versus outright purchases?
Yes, so you're going to have to look in the grant funding guidance for that. I mentioned that there's usually a list of eligible and ineligible expenses. Sometimes funders are going to get pretty granular about it being a straight up purchase or being eligible for leases. So if you look under ineligible expenses, if it does not mention lease, I would say you should be good to go. You can always contact the funder. They'll be able to clarify. If you do decide to go the lease option, I would encourage you to state that in your application somewhere. You know, we're going to deploy this. We're actually going to purchase it on a lease. And if you have space, include 1 to 2 sentences about why leasing equipment is more effective for your organization. Saves us money, it's more effective in this way. You know, we get to do automatic upgrades every 2 years. If you have space, I would include a couple of sentences into there as to why you made that decision. It's going to let the grant funder know that you considered all of your options and you decided this was the best one.
Okay, we have another question. On average, how much time should be allocated to go through the grant formulation process?
Okay, so I would say that comfortably 4 weeks is nice for an average grant application. You get more comfort if you have 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Sometimes you don't have that much time. Usually, if the government's going to announce a program and they give you a concrete 1-day deadline, they're going to give you about 6 weeks to apply. But if you know it's coming, or if it's one of those open applications that you could submit applications at any time, 4 to 8 weeks is really comfortable. Once you click submit, you are going to go into a period where you don't hear anything from the funder. While they're reviewing applications, particularly if it's one of those applications with a singular deadline every year, they now have 80 proposals to read. So you may not hear from them for several weeks other than a confirmation that they received your proposal. During that time, it's important to know that you can't really make any purchases that aren't listed in the grant. You want to make sure that you if you included it in your grant budget, you do not buy it while you're waiting to hear a yes or no, because you can risk being able to be reimbursed for that purchase. So some grants are going to turn around in 4 to 6 weeks. Some grants are going to take 4 to 6 months. Usually the funder is going to be pretty forthright in that information in their grant description, that big document. So you'll know what to plan for in terms of how long it's going to take to hear back. So good practice is the grants you're identifying here today are probably going to be deployed fall of 2022, conservatively.
Ashley, there are so many requests from our attendees to share the PowerPoint presentation with them. So if it's possible, we can do that. Let me also mention that the video recording of this entire session is going to be available for everyone who has registered. So you can always go back to the video and go through the entire presentation that Ashley gave today. We also have quite a few questions about breakout sessions. So let me just mention, since you have all registered to join this event, the breakout sessions are open to you. They are available right now as on-demand sessions on the event page for Automation Funding Grants and Bursaries 101 on Manufacturing Automation website. So you can simply go there and check out the 4 breakout sessions. They are available for you. You have registered, they are open, and you can view them at your convenience anytime you want. Looks like we have still so many questions. So what I'm going to do, Ashley, is maybe help you out with, sending them over to you, the ones that have not been answered. And at the same time, if you would like to reach out to Ashley, her email address was provided earlier today. I'm going to repeat that again shortly, so that if you want to make a note and reach out to her separately, you can do that and ask the question directly. So on that note, okay. So on that note, I would like to say thank you to Ashley for joining us today for this presentation. And if you have, like I said, if you have any more questions for Ashley, please email her at aschultz@grantsoffice.com. It's spelled ASCHULTZ@grantsoffice.com. Moving on to our audience, thank you for being here and showing your support. Ashley, thank you once again for sharing this excellent information on funding available for implementing automation in manufacturing facilities. Once again, thank you to our amazing sponsor, Cisco. The Automation Funding Grants and Bursaries 101 event would not have been possible without you. The event is not over yet. As I've been mentioning, the 4 on-demand sessions are ready and available for viewing. You have to simply go on Manufacturing Automation website, go to the virtual events, and you will find the event page where all the 4 sessions are available. The 4 sessions are grants for automotive manufacturers, grants for industrial equipment and fabrication manufacturers, grants for process manufacturers, grants for partnerships and innovation that cover programs that support research and development through collaboration with universities or research institutions. If you have any questions for the presenters of the on-demand sessions, Stephanie and Joseph, please reach out through the email address provided at the end of each session. It's available in written, and I also say it out, so you're going to be able to reach out to them if you have any questions for them. As we heard today, there are funds available that you can leverage to your advantage. Seize the opportunity to take your company one step further on your digital transformation and automation journey. Please be sure to keep sharing with us how you are embracing digital transformation in your near future. And also do let us know what you thought about automation funding, grants and bursaries 101 in the survey that will pop up after the broadcast ends. Thank you for your attention and have a wonderful rest of your day.